What does it mean to elevate your perspective? To elevate is to raise or lift something to a higher positional level. Perspective is a particular way of regarding something or looking at something. It's a point of view. So to elevate your perspective is to lift your position to a higher level. And that is exactly our intention with this show, to raise your awareness of your God-given potential. Good afternoon and welcome to Elevate Your Perspective. I'm Pastor Curtis Green and thank you so much for taking time out to join us this afternoon to view our program. I want to start off by asking you a few questions. How do you know when something is about to end? How do you know when you have done all that you can do? How do you know when your time is done? How do you know when enough is enough? Have you ever thought about these things? There's a saying that says the writing is on the wall. And what does that mean? And where did that come from? You know, Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:7, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. In other words, he's saying, God, I have done all that I can do. I have given it my best, I'm tired, I have nothing else to give. Anybody ever feel like that? You just can't do anything else. You're not giving up, but you just can't move forward. It's like when you're doing push-ups. You want to do more, but there's just no more strength left. Your tank is just empty. You fought the good fight, but the fight is not over, but you're done. You can't go on anymore. No mas, no more. There's a saying, when fighting a gorilla, you don't quit when you're tired, you quit when the gorilla is tired. You know, anybody out there who ran track, remember the 400 meters and what happens at the last curve at the 300 meters when you're about to enter that last straightaway? If you ran the 400, you know exactly what I'm talking about. At times like these, other people are saying, that's it, it's over, it's time to give up, it's time to stop, it's time to quit. Can't you see the writing is on the wall? Now, this is a natural occurrence in life, right? Whatever we're doing, we can't do it forever. At some point, we're going to have to stop. But that's not what I'm talking about with you today. The writing on the wall I'm talking about is when you know what is right, yet you do what is wrong. When you find that $20 bill on the floor, but you don't turn it in. When the cashier gives you too much change back, but you keep it. When you have something in your shopping cart and you get to the car and realize you didn't pay for it, but you don't go back and pay for it. When you do wrong, when you know to do right. God sees and God judges and God puts his writing on the wall. That's the writing on the wall I'm talking about. This afternoon, the writing is on the wall. Romans 7:18 and 20 says this, for I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep doing. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So Paul is saying here, the things that we do not want to do, these are the things that we keep on doing. And it seems like our sin nature has greater control than our spirit nature. And I believe that this is where the term, the devil made me do it, comes from. Now this, my friend, is an ongoing battle that we have as Christians, fighting with our flesh versus our spirit. It is a forever battle we have, and it's been around ever since the creation of man. I mean, think about Cain and Abel. Where did the anger for Cain to kill Abel come from? What was his influence? He didn't have internet or, angry music or questionable TV shows. Where did that anger come from? That was just inbred sinful nature that he inherited from his parents. This is a flesh battle every Christian has on a daily basis, fighting against what is wrong and what is right. But why? Because that's unfortunately who we are. We are sinners saved by grace, and we just can't shake it off. So today I want to talk to you about if you do wrong versus if you do right. If you do wrong versus if you do right. And we're going to look at Daniel 5 and 6. But first I want to show you these two pictures. Now, what do you see in this word? What word do you see on the screen right now? Do you see the word good, or do you see the word evil? Now, some people say whatever word you saw first, that's what your nature as a human being is. But what word did you see first? Did you see good, or did you see evil? This next picture is our daily battle. It's our good nature fighting against our sinful nature, tugging at our heart, each one of them trying to possess it. Which one are you going to be today? Are you going to give in to your sinful nature, or are you going to let your good nature shine? In Daniel 5, he talks about what happens if you do wrong. Now let me set this up for you. There was a king named Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar did wrong in the sight of God. He dishonored God, he didn't worship God, he didn't follow God's laws. He was just a man on his own accord. And he had a son named Belshazzar. Now Belshazzar, many say, was worse than his father. He also didn't honor God, he also didn't worship God, he also didn't make sacrifices to God. So there was one day where he was having a party. Belshazzar was having a party, and all his friends were there, his concubines were there, his boys were there, and he wanted to show off. So he had his servants go to God's temple and bring back some artifacts. And by doing that, they defiled them and dishonored God. And we could pick up the story in Daniel 5. In Daniel 5, verses 3 through 5 says, "So they brought the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his nobles, his wives, his concubine drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver and bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly a finger of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking." His face became pale and his knees were knocking. Now this is some major fear. He was terrified. But what was he so terrified of? Was it that this finger came out of nowhere? Was it the fact that the finger was there? Or was it what the finger was actually writing? So why was this finger there? The finger was there to tell him he had done wrong in the eyes of God, and to tell him what his fate was about to be. This is where the saying, the writing on the wall, comes from. And I'm not talking about the writing on the wall that we think of something about to end, but this writing is the judgment that's coming because you did wrong. Now let me pause here for a second and ask you these questions. What do you praise besides God? What do you honor besides God? What do you put before God? How have you defiled God's word? How have you defiled God's house? Are you guilty of any of these things? I mean, let's look at Belshazzar's father, right? Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar did not honor God, and he was told, because he didn't honor God, that he was going to go crazy and act like a wild animal in the jungle. And that's exactly what happened. And he didn't come to his right mind until he finally humbled himself before God. And his son Belshazzar knew all of this, but yet and still he did not learn from his father's mistakes. And some of us are the same way today. We have an example of right and wrong right before us, and we see what happens to this person, but yet and still we don't learn from their mistakes, and we go off and do the very same thing that they did. Why do we do this to ourselves? The king was so afraid, and he wanted to know what the writing meant. So he had Daniel come and interpret the writing. And this is what Daniel told the king that the writing said. And we can find it in Daniel 5:22 and 24. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the gauntlets from the temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives, your concubines drank from them. You praised the gods of silver, of gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent the hand and wrote the inscription. Now, in the inscription, there were 3 words. The first word was mean. And mean is translated to say, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. The second word was tekel, and that is translated to say, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. And the third word is peres, and that is translated as, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Now notice the words that are used here. These are words on pretense, meaning this is going to happen. It's not like a prophet where you have an opportunity to change your ways. Well, this will happen if you don't change. This was no opportunity. This is what's going to happen. You have dishonored me. You are going to lose your kingdom. So even after Daniel heard this interpretation, what does he do? You would think the first thing he would do was ask for forgiveness. But look what he does in verse 29. Verse 29 says, Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the 3rd ruler in the kingdom. Verse 30 says, That very night Belshazzar, the king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Daniel the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. So right after the interpretation, the king heard what was going to happen. He still didn't honor God. Instead, he honored man. He honored Daniel. God gave him a second chance to do right. And look what he did. He still dishonored God right in his face and honored man instead. Is God giving you a second chance to right a wrong in your life? What do you need to fix? What do you need to correct? What do you need to redo? Who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to reconcile with? Who do you need to speak to again? God is giving you a second chance, but what are you going to do with it? For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, says Romans 3:23. We all make mistakes. We all fall short. We all have the nature of sin. I mean, that's probably why pencils have erasers, because we're all going to make a mistake. Making a mistake or doing wrong is the lesser sin. Not correcting it, not taking responsibility, and not repenting is the greater sin. What do you need to make right today? Whatever it is, don't wait, because tomorrow is not promised. So Daniel 6 talks about if you do right. So here's the backstory. So this new decree is in place, which makes Daniel top management. He is now third in command. And so the saying goes, new levels, new devils. Now, firstly, Daniel is a Jew. Secondly, he is a servant. And now he's in charge. So now he has major haters that want to bring him down. So they set him up. And I'm sure somebody can relate to being at the workplace today and people not liking you and trying to set you up. But let's look what happens to Daniel in Daniel 6 and 12. It says, so they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? These men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So these men knew what Daniel did. So they plotted to have him fall right into their trap. This is how cunning and clever and sly the devil is. So these men went to the king to create this decree because they knew what Daniel did. So they knew that this decree would get Daniel into trouble. Let's look at verse 13 and then verse 15. Verse 13 says, then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. See how they try to twist the story? So they found out what Daniel did first, then asked the king to make a decree, because that decree would then put Daniel in a bad situation. But now they go to the king and say, look, Daniel is not obeying you, but yet they are the ones that made it so Daniel couldn't obey the king. You see how they twist that up? And then verse 15 says, then the men again went as a group to King Darius and said to him, remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. So they set this thing up in motion probably many weeks in advance. This was a strategic plan to catch Daniel doing what they knew he does. See, your haters are trying to plot against you. And when they can't find any fault in you, they will use what you do, even if it's good. They will find a way to trap you into what you do and use it against you. But as long as you are doing right, God's got your back. As long as you are doing right in the eyes of God, He will always have your back. This way is very hard. This was very hard for the king because he and Daniel kind of became friends. So the king had to make the decree. He could not, change his mind because of one person. So Daniel had to spend the night in the lion's den. But look at what happens in verse 19 through 22. At the first sight of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? My God sent his angels, and he shut the mouth of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. This, my friend, is why it is so important to always do right, all the time. That way, when your accusers come against you, they have nothing to hide. You have nothing to hide and nothing to fear. I mean, anybody can do good when people are looking, but are you the same person in the dark that you are in the light? What do you do when no one is watching? Because guess what? There's someone always watching. Psalm 91:7 says, 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Whatever your it is will not come near you as long as you're doing right in the sight of God. And Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Nothing will hurt you if you are doing right in the sight of God. God will always protect his own. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Now watch what God does in verse 24. Verse 24 says, the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, also with their wives and children, and before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. God's wrath is deadly. He didn't just kill the men who wrongly accused Daniel, but their wives and children as well. You don't want to mess with God's people. You don't want to mess with God's anointed. You don't want to mess with God's chosen ones. And you who are doing the accusations, your actions will affect more than just you. People like to say, well, if I do this, it will only hurt me. Nobody else will be bothered. That is absolutely not true. And I can show you that in Joshua 7, 24 and 25. Joshua 7, 24, 25 says, when Joshua together with all Israel took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the robe, the gold bar, his sons and daughters, his cattle, monkeys, and sheep, his tent, and all that he had to the valley of Achor, Joshua said, why have you brought this trouble on us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today. Then all Israel stoned him. After they had stoned the rest, they buried them. This is a situation where the children of Israel had lost a battle they thought, or a battle they knew they should have won. And then Joshua asked God, why did we lose this battle? And he said, because somebody in your camp was disobedient. God had instructed them after the battle, destroy everything and keep nothing. But just one person, Achan, decided to keep something, and he hid it in his tent. And then Joshua was told through God who had it and what he did. And this, what you just read, was God's punishment. God didn't just kill Achan for stealing that item, but his wife, his children, his cattle, his monkeys, his tent. He destroyed everything he had. One man's action killed his entire family. Your actions do not only affect you. In fact, Deuteronomy 32:35 says, it is mine to avenge. I will repay. In due time, their foot will slip. Their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them. Don't worry about your haters. God has got your back. When you do right by God, he's always on your side. But when you do wrong by God, unfortunately, he is not. As Christians, persecution will come when you do right by God. As we say, new levels, right? New devils. I mean, Satan doesn't care about you if you're not doing anything. If you want to make the devil mad, do something for God. If you want to make him happy, don't do anything for God. I mean, Satan doesn't even care if you go to church. I mean, heck, Satan himself probably goes to church. You can go to church, you can sit, listen, go home. He is cool with that. But start speaking to people about Jesus. Start to witness to people. Start to share your faith. Start to get involved in your church. And dare I say, start to pay your tithes. Then you make him mad. Then he's unhappy. Then he needs to do something. Then is when he wants to come after you. Preach the gospel and see what happens. The attacks will definitely start coming. Even the devil just knowing your future will start some attacks. I want to show you verse 25 and 26. Verse 25 and 26 says, Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the powers of the lions. One man's faith, one man's commitment, and one man's trust in God spread the news of the true living God through an entire nation. I mean, who knows how many people were saved because of this new decree by the king? All because of one man's courage. What will you stand up for? What will you fight for? Jesus died for you. Will you fight for him? One person can save a nation. Daniel did, Esther did, and so can you. We seek to reach the one. One good deed can save a life, can save a family, can save a community, can save a nation. Are you going to do evil or are you going to do good? Which side will you be on? You know, Psalms 128:1-2 says this: "Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. When you eat the labor of your hands, you shall be happy, and it shall be well with you." When you do good versus when you do evil, which side will you be on? I thank you again so much for taking time out to be with us this afternoon. I hope this message has blessed you, and thank you again for watching Elevate Your Perspective. We'll see you next time. God bless. What does it mean to elevate your perspective? To elevate is to raise or lift something to a higher position or level. Perspective is a particular way of regarding something or looking at something. It's a point of view. So to elevate your perspective is to lift your position to a higher level. And that is exactly our intention with this show, to raise your awareness of your God-given potential. How do you see the world? How do you see yourself? Is your glass half full or is it half empty? What is your perspective of yourself and how can you elevate it? What are you believing God for? And what is your level of expectation to receive it? These are the questions we will address and answer on this show. So join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and together let's elevate your perspective.